because a lot of women have a hard time receiving.
Mhm.
They have a hard time letting others do for them because
Mhm.
they're used to always taking care of stuff.
Hello and welcome to the Authentic Wednesday podcast. Each week, my guest and I share our vulnerable behind the scenes stories of giving ourselves permission to take off our masks, let go of expectations, and embrace our own path of freedom and authentic connection. I am your host, Bianca Hughes, a lover of authenticity. Hello and welcome to the Authentic Wednesday podcast. I am your host, Bianca Hughes. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And just thank you so much as always being here and joining me on the podcast. So I have a guest with me on the podcast today. And actually, this is, before I forget, this is episode 70 of the podcast. And my guest today is Keshia Rice. She is a dating coach and two-time Emmy-nominated journalist. As a coach, Keshia helps successful Christian women learn how to attract quality men without compromising their values, identity, or their sanity. As the daughter, sister, and niece of preachers, Keshia understands what it's like as a Christian woman to balance a conservative upbringing with modern hookup culture. And like many women in the corporate world, Keshia knows the challenges of being ambitious while maintaining your femininity. Keshia and her husband live in Atlanta, Georgia. When she's not coaching or producing TV newscasts, Keshia loves to travel. She has been to several states and 10 countries. You know I love traveling, so excited. So let's go ahead and get into this conversation with Keshia. Hello, Keshia, which is my namesake. My middle name's Keshia.
Cool.
Yes, it's spelled a bit different, but I don't have the I. I just Kesha. But hello, Keshia, and welcome to the Authentic Wednesday podcast.
Thank you so much. And actually, it's funny. People always talk about the way my name is spelled.
Mhm.
I was named after Keisha Knight Pulliam, the actress who played Rudy on the Cosby Show. So
Ah, yes, yes. I love that. Okay. Okay. And then people say Kesha as well to me.
yes, they do. They love
They
that.
say they say Kesha. Is it Kesha? And I'm like, no, it's Keisha. And can I tell you a funny secret, funny thing about the name Keisha? You know, when I came here, like everyone's telling me, like, you have a ghetto name. And I'm like, what? So in America, I don't know, I guess that's I don't know, the
No, and
feel
it's so
around it.
strange. Yeah, because depending on like the spelling, it can mean she who is kind, or mine means favorite one. And it's
Hmm.
like, what's ghetto about that?
I don't know, but they're like, there's always a Keisha or a Lakeisha, and I'm like, oh, okay. I'm thinking my name is great and prestigious, which it still is. But yeah, that was
Yeah,
it.
given the
Yeah,
meaning, like I would give that to my daughter if I didn't already have it. Like, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. So I just thought I'd let you know that. So my let's dive in. My favorite question is that I ask everyone is, what does authenticity mean to you?
To me, authenticity means love. And I know that sounds really cliche for a dating coach, but hear me out on this one. So, when you are authentic with yourself, there's all this talk nowadays about self-care and bubble baths and naps and all that good
Uh-huh.
stuff. And I applaud that stuff. I do. You should take care of yourself. But a major part of self-care is also not allowing yourself to be stuck in dysfunctional, unhealthy patterns, holding yourself accountable to the mistakes that you've made in the past, holding yourself accountable to the ways that you know you can grow, not allowing yourself to be stagnant. And when you are an authentic person, you love yourself enough to continue doing that work. and authenticity to other people. So, whether that's to my husband or being authentic to my family or my audience, I do that because I love them. Like, I could be, the Instagram influencer type and post the like lifestyle pictures and all of that and make people feel happy and imagine that life for like 5, 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can talk about things that really matter and I can be honest with who I am. And I can share that, you know, there's this tendency to think that when we make mistakes, we're the only ones who ever make them.
Mm-hmm.
And for me to be able to say, hey, I've been there before, or hey, this coach has a coach because she's always working on herself. That is authenticity. And I do it because I love the people who see my post. I love the women that I work with. Again, in my marriage, I love my husband, and we can't work on things that are never addressed.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that is why authenticity is an act of love.
I've never heard anyone describe it like that. And I never get tired of people's descriptions. And I think that's so beautiful. And it really makes sense. It makes sense. Because people always talk about, and I know you mentioned this on your thing the other day. I was, you know, stalking you, but you talked about being nice, and are you being right nice? And I always talk about the difference between kind and kind of nice, and it kind of reminds me of that. It's like, are you really thinking about that other person? When you're being authentic, you're also being true and thinking about yourself and loving you, and then you're also being authentic and loving that other person. And yeah, I love that. Oh. Have you always been authentic?
No, absolutely not. No, seriously. So I'm a PK. I'm a preacher's kid, right?
Ah.
So it's not a matter of there's this whole thought that preachers' kids, particularly preachers' daughters, are either, let's just be real, either angels or hoes. And I was never either one, really. You know what I mean? But there was so much pressure when I was growing up, to be a certain way.
Mm,
And I always wanted to make my parents happy. I always wanted to make my parents proud. So it's like talking about Instagram, kind of like an algorithm. You know what I mean? You knew that there were certain behaviors, certain ways of saying things, certain ways of doing things that got you what you wanted,
mhm,
that made everybody around you happy, didn't make any waves. And I would say that's how I spent my childhood and, a lot into my teenage years, even, some periods in my 20s, just trying to like ride the wave, not cause any problems. And it's all well and good for a while.
mhm,
Like I actually, people are always like, be yourself and all this stuff. And I actually think that sometimes there's a season to just shut up and just like just chill, you know. But it got to a point where I was like, this is not making me happy.
mm,
And I actually remember being in a relationship with someone and he was like, are you happy with me? And being, having the journalism background, being a writer and all that, I was like, I'm content. And he was like, what does that mean?
mhm,
And I was like, well, our relationship is good on paper. It's fine. There's nothing, there's nothing wrong with it. Um, and he was like, what kind of relationship is that? And actually, it was funny because years later that flipped on me, and I ended up being on the other side of that conversation. But
mm,
but that being the case, it was just like I can't not be authentic, right? Like it got to the point where that wasn't sustainable.
mm. What made you crack?
Um, when I was on the other side of that conversation,
Ooh.
actually. I was dating someone. We had been dating for like a pretty good period of time. And, you know, one day we were watching TV and I was just like, "Hey, marriage, what you think about it? Got thoughts?" And he said, "Yeah, sure. Just let me know whenever you want to plan it and stuff." And I was like, "Okay." Um, I didn't think that was going to be like that. And he was like, "Keshia, look, you're good. I'm good. My family likes you. The way that you and I both work, it's not like we're going to see each other that much anyways. Like, just let me know when you want to have a wedding." And
Wow.
I was just like, "Okay." And I went home and I thought about it and I was like, I can't. Like, that's not what I want. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, something has to change.
What was that like, saying that and admitting to yourself? Because I always talk about authenticity. That first part is getting honest, but what was that like for really saying to yourself, "That's not what I want," for the first time, really like saying that?
I think there were a lot of years in my life where I tried so hard to be just practical
Mm-hmm.
and go with the flow.
Mm.
And that was the day when what the consequences of that would look like. Like I had never actually dealt with the consequences of that.
Hmm. And you didn't like the consequences.
No,
Mm.
because
Okay.
I just started playing it forward in my mind about like
Wow.
getting married to someone that he was right. The way we both worked, we weren't going to see each other anyways. Um, the thought of having kids and them getting to the age of being like, oh, we want to hear your love story, and I would
Mm.
have to be like, well, there really isn't one. Um,
Mm. And you didn't want that. That's not what you wanted.
right.
Okay. Okay. It's interesting. I love that. My friends are having a conversation and they're like, "Bianca, you really think about the consequences." I said, "I sure do." I could be eating a bag of chips and know all the consequences, and I don't care. But then there's other times when I'd be like, no, no, I'm not doing that. Where I've actually like kind of thought that through. But we tend to sometimes not think about the consequences, not just about what we're doing, it's what we're not doing. And if we're not asking the questions, if we're not making waves, because we don't want to make waves, but we don't think about, well, what happens if I don't make waves? Like, we really don't always sit down and just sit with ourselves and ask those questions. I feel like sometimes we just want to make sure it'll just all work out.
Yeah, it's just like dating. How
Mm.
many women will date a man who looks good on paper?
Hmm.
The reality is different,
Hmm.
but they will try to hold on to him and fix him or
Hmm.
change him because he looks so good on paper.
Yeah, it's that holding on to that dream, right?
Yeah.
And not and not and not um and not wanting to let go, or fear of what will happen if I let go of this. So that's a great way to segue, because you know all this and you work with all these women about dating and helping them. And I was on your website and I was like, I mean, I know she does all this stuff, but do I really need to talk to her some more? Because you said a lot of stuff that resonated with me. But also I know that when you're doing this work, you're not just doing the work. I feel like people I know who are really doing the work and really helping people, it's because they have been there themselves. And I feel like, of course, this is your ministry. So all these women, high achievers, broken hearts, all this other thing, want a date, I love your thing, like you are a great catch. I love all of that. But what happened to you? What was your experience like in order to be like, well, I got to help these women too? What was that dating as a Christian woman like?
Yeah, I'm a millennial, so I did what all good millennials do, which is have a quarter life crisis.
Mm.
So my particular quarter life crisis was I was at a point where you hop on Facebook every 5 seconds, someone is announcing their engagement or
Mm.
their baby or they just cured cancer or whatever it is. And one of my friends was getting married. She asked me to plan her bridal shower for her.
Mm-hmm.
And it was during the period where I was planning that bridal shower that just like things were not going well in my job. And I had people again on Facebook posting about job promotions. And, you know, I was dating someone, but it was kind of obvious that this was not going to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I'm dealing with planning a bridal shower for someone else. And even like I was going to church. The
Mm-hmm.
church posted this picture during worship service of me and a friend of mine. She is all up in the spirit. She looks gorgeous. I am all up in the spirit. I look a hot mess. And I'm like, I can't even God right.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow.
so,
I can't God right? Wow.
yes, that's the thought I had.
Wow. Okay.
So, like I can't do the whole like worship stuff right because of like one
Mm.
picture, you know? Um, and I was planning the showers, writing out invitations. I just broke down. I
Mm.
just started crying all over the invitations that I had filled out. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you know what? I don't know what I want, but it's not this. Not this is what I want. Um, and I went on that whole journey of like, the personal development whole. You start with the books, you
Mm-hmm.
start the podcast, then before you
Mm-hmm.
know it, you're getting a coach and you're going to therapy and all
Mm-hmm.
that. And, after I straightened my life out and started, like getting the job that I want and actually working on my spirituality and my faith with God. And also meeting the man who became my husband and everything. I was like, it doesn't have to be this way. Like other women don't have to go through moments like these.
Mm. What did that feel like though for you? Um, when you said I can't do this. What was this and what did that feel like?
It was just like I was just thinking about logistically. Like I've always been a practical person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was in my late 20s. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I'm going to live like another 70 years or so. Like whatever this situation is as far as not feeling like I'm, like in the job, I wasn't getting the pay that I deserved. Not feeling like being in a relationship and feeling like I wasn't getting the consideration I
Mm-hmm.
deserved. Um, when it came to like, my relationship with God, not feeling like I was starting to feel very much like a Sunday Christian. Like I was feeling great on
Mm.
Sundays, but Monday through Saturday we're not feeling very great.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I can't do that.
Mm.
I just need something that's better than that. And that's when I started exploring, like, what is better than that? Um,
Mm.
do I need to switch churches? Do I need to meditate more? Do I need to journal more? Do I need to ask for a raise, which is what I did at that job and got denied. So I found a new job. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to get out of this sucky relationship? Which of course the answer was yes. And I did. You know what I mean? It was just like that's really my journey. I kept asking myself in all these different areas of my life, health, wealth, relationships, what is something that's better
Okay.
than this?
So let me ask you this. Um, I can relate to this, and because of what I'm hearing you say, and I know this is not what you mean, but I just want to address something. Um, I have done this personally, and I've been like, well, I have a great relationship with God. My business is doing well. Um, I've done some healing work and got great
Yeah,
friends, and I'm a great catch. I'm still not with someone. What am I doing wrong? Because you sound like you did a lot of personal work and things like that. And sometimes it could be like, well, you have to do all of these things and then you'll meet someone, or then this will happen. That's what it sounds like. I know you don't mean that. But what do you say to someone who may also be hearing that and feel like that? Does that make sense?
of course. Yes and no.
Okay.
So, and the reason why I say yes and no is because people have a tendency to ask for abundance without being set up for abundance, without having the capacity for it. You know, you want these high value roles in your career, but you won't show yourself to be a good worker.
Mm.
um, you want to have a great body, but you also want to eat that gallon of ice cream. So in relationships, like, so with my clients, for example, the very first thing that I have them do is make a list of what they want in a
Mhm.
partner. And it's a very specific list. I don't believe in like 30-page list, anything
Mhm.
like that. But we talk about two things. One, why are these qualities so important to you? Like, are they even important to you? Are they important to other people? And two, are you the things that you're asking for?
Mhm. What if they are?
If they are, then our next step is the fact that they're just not found. You know what
Mm.
I mean? So it's the confidence, it's the getting out there, it's the learning how to approach men, um,
Mhm.
learning how to network and have these conversations.
Mm.
So that's a completely different issue. But if a lot of times what women will realize is things like they want a man who is protective of them, which requires a type of caring energy, but they are the first ones to go out and act like the cast members of Bad Girls Club. Like that, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Like you
So they're
want
not
someone who has
vulnerable?
that. What was that?
They're not vulnerable, you're saying?
Right. They're not putting themselves out there. And they also, we talk about masculine and feminine energy and how masculine energy is like a provider energy. Feminine energy
Yeah,
is like
tell
a,
me
a
about that. I'm hearing more and more. I'm not one for it. I'm not against it, but I'm
yeah.
not for it. I'm just like, I'm hearing it more and more. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah. So when we talk about masculine and feminine energy, we're talking about balance. And I get why you're not for it because there's this idea of women as meek and mild, and
Mm.
men is
I
like
think
the
that's
the
what it
the
is.
the,
Yeah.
the big strong, like
Mhm.
I'm gonna come up in here and like bust up everything and all that. uh the fact is that we have both
Mm.
inside of us. Even biologically, women have higher levels of estrogen and progesterone. Men have higher levels of androgen and testosterone, is how we were biologically created. So when you look at these energies, masculine energy is the energy of drive and push, a little bit of aggression, setting goals, ambition. So obviously, women have those tendencies as well.
Mm.
Um, Feminine energy is the energy of nurture, flow, creativity. You can't tell me that there aren't men out here who aren't creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right. A lot.
so so we have those. It is a matter of certain things will cause us to push ourselves further in one direction and become off balance.
Mhm.
So things like if you grew up as a woman in an environment where your parents weren't around a lot, either because, it could be that they were abusive, it could be that they didn't care, it could be just that they worked a lot of hours, whatever the scenario may be, you might have gotten yourself in a position where you're always taking care of yourself from a young child.
Mm.
So, feminine energy is a receiving energy and
Mm.
allows you to receive love. So, if you have set yourself up from childhood, through no fault of your own, to constantly handle everything yourself, then you have a hard time receiving love from others. And that takes you out of your feminine.
Got it. That's really good. I love that description. Can you
Yeah.
did you relate to any of that when you were dating? Did you find that perhaps you had to be able to receive love more? Um, or you found like you was a bit more balanced in that area?
Yeah, definitely. So in my case, both my parents have always worked very long hours.
Mm.
And I always joke that technically I have a brother and sister, but they are 10 years older than me and 12 years older than me. So I have four parents. really.
Mm.
So I grew up a very independent child. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I
Mm-hmm.
grew up in some ways almost like an only child
Mm-hmm.
to a certain extent. And I learned how to take care of myself. I was a latchkey kid, and you get used to that. Also, you know, my mom is very much a hard worker.
Mm.
She has always been the type to work overtime. She does not turn down shifts, all that good stuff. So, growing up in that environment, I became I became Olivia Pope. I became is handled. I always take care of it. And
Mm.
that was seeping over. It started out that was like my school persona.
Mm-hmm.
I helped people with like their homework and stuff like that. And people were even in high school coming to me for advice. Um, and then it became my work persona. I was the workaholic. I was always staying extra hours. And it became my relationship persona too. I was dating men who needed to be mothered.
Mm. Interesting. And so when you started dating your husband, what was the difference?
I had done that work on myself so that
Mm.
by the time he came along, I was not pushing men away because I
Ah.
was receiving. And it's little things like I remember on our first date, my husband brought me flowers,
Mm-hmm.
and I took the flowers. I said, "Thank you." I went and got a vase, put the flowers up, and then we left for our date. That doesn't sound remarkable to you, but there's a time when I would have been like, well, that's like so much money, and like you really didn't have to do that, and
Ah.
like,
Ah. I like that. So I think so my business partner Justin, um so we're suite mates in our office. So sometimes we leave at the same time. And Justin will take my bag. Sometimes I know he does this on purpose and he plays around. And so there'll be times where I'm getting ready and he didn't take a bag. So I just take the bag. Like I'm just going downstairs. And he's like, "Are you not gonna let me take the bag?" I said, "Listen, the bag is there. I'm not gonna ask you to take this bag. If you want to take it, take it. But if you don't, I'm not waiting around, right?"
yeah,
And he said, "Okay." I said, "Listen, I'm all for asking for help, but or receiving the help, but I'm not going to sit around and be like waiting around for you." So, but sometimes I just wait now a bit extra and I'll be like, "He's going to take this bag and let me just sit here and take
no,
up this."
you
And it's cuz I have a heavy bag. It's not like my regular, it's like on my laptop and all that when I'm leaving the office. So he like simmers me.
no, you have to normalize that.
Mhm.
You really do, because a lot of women have a hard time receiving.
Mhm.
They have a hard time letting others do for them because
Mhm.
they're used to always taking care of stuff. I
Mhm.
remember in my journalism career, I worked in Asheville, North Carolina, which
Mhm.
gets snow sometimes. And I had a male coworker who, during the winter, for the few years that I worked there, he would always before or like right when my shift ended, he would take my keys. He would go out and he would defrost the windows and make sure the car was heated up.
Mm.
And I remember other women at my job being like, how is that happening? Like, are you dating? It's like, no, we're not dating. He just wants to be nice. And then just be like, you're not going to like tell him that you got that. And I'm like, no. He wants to be, he wants to make sure that the car is warm. Cool. I'm going to
Mm.
accept that.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So it's a breath. It's a work in progress. And I guess because I'm so like, come on, I'm like 10 steps ahead of you. So I feel like you need to be like 20 steps ahead of me. But also I can slow down. I can slow down. So did you kind of like realize any other, like you talked about the slut? the small things, and I appreciate you talking about the small things, because I feel like sometimes it's the small things that matter. But did you recognize there were any other patterns you needed to break or things you needed to do in that process leading up to, well, shall I say, when you were dating your husband?
Um, yeah, I had thoughts actually
Mm-hmm.
before he and I got together. I thought I was good at setting boundaries.
Mm. Okay, tell me more.
Yeah. So what I mean by that is, especially I guess in a corporate setting, um, there's this tendency of mine, like in brain, out mouth. I just kind of say whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I thought that that meant that, like, you know, I'm powerful, I'm intimidating, like,
Mm.
people listen to me and all this stuff because I have no problem speaking my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And what was really happening was I was putting on a front to make people think that I was tougher than I was.
Mm.
And, you know, back to back to the beginning of this episode when we were talking about me being a preacher's kid and trying to constantly convey images.
Mm-hmm.
I spent so much of my life trying to convey whatever image I thought was going to get me the furthest ahead, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And when my husband and I, when our relationship started to get more serious, and that was like another aspect of it because I was always the type to kind of hold men at a distance. It's not that great at vulnerability.
It's not
So,
easy.
yeah. So when we were at a point where I was actually finding myself getting vulnerable with him, things would come up and I would find myself being in a position of like, this bothers me, but like, how much does it bother me? I really want to bring this up. Do I really want to rock the wave and all that? And for me, it was like, there were certain things that we could kind of get away with when we were dating because
Mm-hmm.
we didn't live together until we got married.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got married and we were in the same house, it was like, oh, I cannot do this. Like,
Oh, I have a question about that. What was
yeah,
because I know, well, about something you said, and you've said this a few times, and just so other people can kind of hear that. What was your fear, or I don't know if you still have this fear, about rocking the boat, or rocking the wave, or making waves? What was your fear? If I make waves, if I rock the boat, what was your fear? What would happen?
yeah. Growing up in a church family. And when I say a church family, my dad is a minister.
Mm-hmm.
My brother is a youth pastor. He's the one who married my husband and I.
Mm-hmm.
I have uncles,
Mm-hmm.
aunts, cousins who are pastors and bishops
Mm-hmm.
and all that good stuff. And this is not to slam the Christian church. I am very much a Christian. At the same time, you grow up in an environment that is full of secrets and full of people not talking about things. My parents counseled other people, and I've always been fairly quiet. I can be in a room and people don't notice that I'm there. So, from a very young age, I heard things about like preachers embezzling money and running out of town, or pastors or pastors' wives having affairs, and it was always like the things come up, and it's what is the quietest way possible we can deal with this, and like push it to the side and get it out the way. And that was when you grow up in that environment, it's hard to get out of we were talking about facing consequences earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get out of that idea. It is
Mm.
it is really hard to find yourself in a place of you've seen people handle things quietly your entire life and you're like, am I supposed to speak up on issues, or we
Mm.
like I thought we
Okay.
bury everything.
Ah, so it's a learned behavior. It was a learned behavior. I thought
Yeah.
we buried everything. Bury everything. Okay. So some of the stuff you said about dating and which is not uncommon for dating in general. And you're a Christian and you particularly focus on Christian women. What is the reason for that? And kind of like how do you find that that can be different um dating as a Christian?
Yeah, so in some ways it's absolutely no different.
Mm.
You know, a lot of the same common issues come up, but what I find is because of things like purity culture,
Mhm.
because of all this talk about submission in a way that is usually totally misconstrued,
Mhm.
um, and because of the way a lot of church systems are still set up, where, there's still churches nowadays that don't allow women preachers, that don't allow women to have any type of leadership role, or leadership is capped at a certain level, that there is a lot of people pleasing. There is a lot of talking about like rocking the boat, not doing that. um, there's a lot of selective, uh, being very selective about verses. So whenever we talk about the Proverbs 31 woman, for example, we talk about how much her husband and her children love her. Go read that chapter. She was an
She's a
entrepreneur.
boss.
Yes. With multiple streams of income. Like,
She is a boss.
but we don't really read those verses that often.
Mm.
So there are all these ideas about. I work with women who are both, you know, they're Christian and they're also ambitious, and they feel like those two things don't go together.
Mm.
So one, they're thinking that men aren't going to talk to them. They're thinking that, men aren't going to be interested. So then that hampers the whole confidence thing. And two, because they're taught like this is the way things are and this is the way that they're supposed to behave, they often end up in relationships that are codependent. They end up in relationships with men who are narcissistic, who control them, and oftentimes they get told that that's completely normal. So,
Mm.
teaching them that one, you're worthy, teaching them that two, there are men out here who appreciate your brain and not just your body, and three, teaching them that what those warning signs look like of a controlling relationship, of a toxic relationship, that point kind of has to be hammered home a little bit more.
Mm. With Christians?
Yeah,
Because of the church culture and things like that, and how the Bible and Scripture shoots. So I can relate to that. Um, I can relate to. Let me be specific. I can relate to being ambitious and one and um is this going to be okay? Blah 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 blah. Um, and I really had to work through and just remind myself, like, I'm called to do this. And I never woke up and said, I'm going to own my own business. All I know is I wanted to be a counselor.
yeah,
Right. And then all these things and the doors that have opened and I think you really do have to get secure. And I think that kind of helps with that when you're loving. And even if you don't know your purpose, which is okay, if you're a Christian, you're called to love, and that's enough. And if you figure everything out, that's okay. But it's the impact, right? And so I think I can be so secure now and confident in that impact that if I meet someone and they're like, well, you're not meant to be doing this and you're not a Christian. And then also in my relationship with God and knowing his love and having that relationship helps me feel a lot more secure. Like and I think I was having a conversation with my therapist and it's like, I don't just want a husband, like I want a partner. And I
exactly.
think I think that's it makes it different when you say I want a partner because ultimately that's what it is, right? The representation of Jesus and the church. Like that's a partnership. It's not, it's so much. So that's why I just wanted to say I can definitely relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing for me is allowing the women that I work with to see that they have choices because they get indoctrinated either way.
Mm,
It's either your Susie housewife or you're like one of the members of the cast of Sex and the City or The Devil Wears Prada. And, I don't need no man, but, of course, a good one's going to come along and all this good stuff. And, you don't have to be either, honestly. Like, there were women I went to college with who went to college specifically to get their MRS, their missus.
they're what?
Their missus. Their purpose for going to college was like while we were on campus, they hung out at the law school library all day, or they hung out, near the engineering school. Their purpose was to go to college to find a husband. And a lot of them succeeded in that, still married to their husbands. I don't knock that. If that's, if you really believe that that is your greatest purpose is to be like housewife and mother,
Yeah.
I think that's noble.
Yeah.
I think that's fine.
Hmm.
Um, there are women out here who never ever will get married, will never have kids. They don't want that. That's fine.
Mm,
There are women out here who want that true partnership. That's the class I typically work with, and that's great too. But a lot of women are following what their mothers did, or they're following what the church says they need to do, or they're following a lifestyle that looks good on TV.
mm,
And that is one of my jobs, is to help guide them
mm,
through what it is that they're really searching for and how that type of relationship fulfills their purpose. I always tell the women that I work with that all relationships are related. You show me a woman who has issues with dating, there is some issue with her family or her coworkers or her business or her relationship with God, because they're normally the same issue: communication problems, lack of boundaries, lack of self esteem, or whatever, just manifesting itself in different ways.
mm,
So it's important that you understand why it is that you want to be in a relationship with someone, and also how you think that relationship benefits you. My very first client, she and I worked together. At the end of our time together, she was like, "Thank you so much. You helped me see that I want to be single. I don't want to be in a relationship." I consider that to be a victory because she
wow.
was so happy,
Wow. Wow. That's
and it's,
powerful.
yeah.
That's powerful. Yeah. Gosh, I can talk about this forever and I don't have time because I can relate in so many ways. Um, and I'm a thinking this is why you did it, but you can tell me what made you decide, okay, I want to help these women. But something I'd noticed on your website, and I don't know if this is intertwined, is that there are no steps or roadmap for love. Um, we have some guidance, but you know, we get a lot more of the don'ts than the do's. Um, is that what kind of propelled you to help these women? Or was it something else?
Yeah. So when I think about what my job is to be, um, I go back in time and I go back to when I was crying over a box of wedding invitations or bridal shower invitations. And I always think, what would I have wanted someone to tell me back then?
And what would you have wanted someone to tell you?
One, that I didn't need to know all the answers right away, that those were going to come. As a very type A person who likes to know everything in advance, that
Hmm.
would have been very helpful to hear from somebody else. But also that a lot of what I was looking for in a partner were things that I did not have in myself.
Mm. Mm.
Um, and it was a matter of not just being better, for someone else. I mean, I think you should be. I think part of your responsibility in a marriage is to be great for the other person so that you can help motivate them and uplift them and all that. But also, no one was ever going to make me happy because I couldn't make myself happy. Um, I wasn't satisfied with myself.
Mm.
So until I became that person, it wasn't just that I wasn't going to attract a better relationship. I also wasn't going to enjoy a better relationship.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. That's good. Thank you. So, is there anything else? I mean, you kind of said it all, but is there anything else you want to leave with the audience or want them to know?
Breathe.
Breathe.
Yeah. Learn to spend some time with yourself in silence. This is the biggest thing that I have with women who are constantly, and not just women, but I work with women, um, but women who are constantly trying to find their next relationship, is that it's often a matter of they are scared to face what happens if they have to spend too much time with themselves.
Mm. Okay.
Learn to sit in where you are, the season that you're in. Learn to handle that.
Mm.
And then bring your awesome, amazing, beautiful self to a relationship. But spend some time by yourself before you do that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So tell us, how can we shower you with love? Where can we connect with you? And if there's anyone who wants some more of your stuff, how can they get in contact?
Yeah, sure. So my website is KeshiaRice.com. And just pointing out again that Keshia is spelled Keshia. You can also find me. The quickest way to find me is on Instagram.
Mm.
I'm at Keshia Rice. And you can attest to the fact that I spend a fair amount of time there. So,
Yeah. She's dropping gems.
so if you would like to work with me, I do one-on-one coaching. I also have both group coaching and a couple of courses. So right now, my latest group is on soul ties and trauma bonds. So the link to that program, and also to schedule a call with me if you think you'd rather do one-on-one, because I get it. A lot of
Hmm.
women would rather have that more one-on-one time. Then both of those are in my Instagram bio.
Cool. And we'll put those in the show notes too to make it easy
Okay,
if you can't
great.
find you on Instagram. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. And just remember to go follow her and just email her or text her or DM her, shall I say, and just let her know how great this has been and how helpful it's been. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this.
If you connected with what you just heard, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. You can stay connected by following the Instagram Bianca Keshia, spelled Keshia, Kesha, or visiting the website authenticwednesday.com. Remember, authenticity is a journey, not a destination.